Hello everyone and welcome to Helsinki, welcome to Europe Talks Solidarity. I think we should do a round of applause. Woo! It's good to be in a live event and we also have hopefully a lot of online viewers with us tonight. My name is Anina, I'm one of your facilitators throughout the event. I'm here from Finland and here we have...
Okay, my name is Elizabeth. I'm Austrian, so also traveling to Helsinki, being here with you for the next few days. I'm very much looking forward.
Yes, so we have an exciting program ahead of us for 3 days. But before we get to the program and actual technicalities related to the program, I will give the floor to Ms. Romina Matei and Jutta Kivimäki from the Finnish NA, who will be giving us a sort of an official welcome to the event. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jutta Kivimäki. I'm working in the Finnish Federation of, in the European Solidarity National Agency in Finland. On behalf of our national agency, I would like to welcome you all to this seminar and also online. For us, this topic is really relevant and we want to really support the different aspects of the solidarity and also have this kind of free talk about this topic and see what is in there. And I would also like to introduce the other ones who has been here with us organizing this event. So first of all, my colleague Kati Inkinen from the Finnish National Agency. Then we have another national agencies from German National Agency. We have Malte. And from the Austrian NA, we have Anja. And for the reporter, there is also Maria there on the... So I hope that you will enjoy here and have the safe space to also and feel free to open up your questions and your thoughts to the solidarity.
Thank you so much, Jutta. Hi everyone, I'm Romina. I'm representing SALTO, European Solidarity Corps, which is based in Vienna in Austria. Just before moving a bit further, are you familiar with SALTO? Yes, you know what we are dealing with? Great, so welcome also to the ones online. Just a few words. So SALTO, we are a resource center and our mission is to create tools and resources so you, as practitioners, policymakers, researchers, have the proper tools to use the youth programs. We are a special SALTO because we deal with a very special program which has a very special name. And in the middle of the name, it's a value that is very dear to my heart, which is solidarity. And I'm very grateful that we have the chance to have this conference, and I'm very grateful to the Finnish NA, the Austrian and the German one that decided to invest money and time for us to have the privilege and the frame to discuss about solidarity in such challenging times. Because everyone lately is speaking about solidarity, right? From the pandemic times, we heard about solidarity. We hear about solidarity now having a war very close to us. But this is the first time when we discuss about solidarity from the youth field perspective. And not any kind of youth field, but the youth that are working on Solidarity Corps program. So for me, it's a very important conference because it's a start of making history in what means youth field. Because we have only 2 days, the time is very short, but we have 2 days to shape the narrative of solidarity in our field. And I think that's not a small thing to do. So thank you very much that you decided to have this. I hope that you will enjoy the discourse. I'm very grateful that the experts decided to join here. We have amazing experts, amazing facilitators, amazing environment. So what we need to do is just to live it to the maximum. And let's make history together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know a lot of you might be wondering why are we using 2 microphones. So just to clarify, one is going out to the online viewers and the other one is for the room. So and also to be doubly heard. So hopefully the message gets across both to the online viewers and also to everyone here in this room. Welcome. I'm going to go through a bit of practicalities. As you all know, we're going to talk about very relevant and also delicate topics throughout this event. And in order to have meaningful and good discussions, we would like to invite everyone to respect and follow the principles of a safer space. We strive to ensure that everyone is met as their own self and that no one has the fear of discrimination or harassment in this event. Therefore, we ask all of those involved in the event, both present here in Helsinki and online, to adhere the following principles. First of all, we are all equal and diverse. Everyone has the right to participate, and we are committed to anti-discrimination and anti-racism. We don't assume. We respect everyone's right to self-determination and do not make assumptions about gender, sexual orientation, religion, family relationships, or other background of a person. We give space for everyone to participate. We pay attention to our word choices, we all respect each other, and we encourage everyone to participate in their own terms. We address harassment and we do not accept hate speech. Should there be any problems related to this, we have a contact person here who is our lovely Kati Inkinen. So should you meet any harassment or inappropriate behavior or anything of the sort, you can contact Kati. Do not don't stay alone with your problem. And let's encourage everyone to make this a safe space. But in case there are issues, Kati is here to help. And if you don't want to talk, you can also SMS or send her a WhatsApp message and you'll see the number there. I think everyone here in the room has received this information via email as well. And also, let's wander together. Let's ask good questions and let's learn from potential or possible mistakes. Nobody's perfect and we are all learning to do this co-living together. So let's give ourselves the freedom and the opportunity to learn. Now I would like to ask if everyone is willing to commit to these rules. Yes? I see a lot of heads nodding, which is a good sign. Excellent. Another thing, we would really like to ask everyone to be on time, because we also are streaming a lot of the program. So for those of you who are here in Finland, we tend to be rather punctual. So 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock sharp. So if you tend to be late, please set your alarm a little bit earlier rather than late. Another thing, we hope that when we are here, we would concentrate in being here rather than like answering emails or other things. If you want to tweet or otherwise share things online, please use the hashtag #EuropeTalksSolidarity with the hashtag and all the first letters in capital. So Europe Talks Solidarity. Please do tweet and share your thoughts and insights on social media. But otherwise, let's concentrate in the wonderful atmosphere that we're all going to create together. And for those of you who are here in Helsinki, the door on my left-hand side is open. They will be closed, otherwise they're locked. So if you have to pop out for something, use that door, because, I mean, otherwise they'll be locked and you'll be knocking the door. So it's a security measure here in the hotel, so they can't leave them open. So that's why it's a little bit like that. So use this door if you need to pop out during the sessions. Excellent. Everyone okay? Can we show thumbs or anything else? Yeah. Or hands? Yes. Brilliant. Once again, welcome to Helsinki, and I hope everyone hopes that you'll have a wonderful time, and we got good weather just in time. Thank you very much. And now I will hand over to Elizabeth.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Okay, so a lot of information beforehand, but I think it's time to get into medias res, would say. To jump into the topic, jump into the program, start talking about solidarity. So it's the conference name, Europe Talks Solidarity, so I think it's really time to start talking. And therefore, we have some very nice, very interesting keynote speakers for this evening to start with, to get into the topic, to have a look at different concepts, different ideas. And to start with, I would invite Teppo, and I have to look at my super nice paper, Eskelinen, is a senior lecturer in social sciences from the University of Eastern Finland, but maybe you will have a word on that too. So I would invite you, Teppo, to come to join us and have a first input, first start for this conference. So enjoy.
Yes, thank you. I guess I was probably introduced University of Eastern Finland, where we have a campus, lies about 400 kilometers northeast bound from here. You only have to cross that much of deep dark forest to get to a pretty nice campus. I recommend you to try the trip. You'll be surprised what kind of like lively international campus we have there in the back forest. Anyway, I was invited to talk about solidarity in Europe and kind of prospects of how I see issues developing at the moment. I have 30 minutes, which will imply a very squeezed talk, because we are talking about massive issues. But I'll try to give some kind of general definition of solidarity as I see it, and then point out some ways how it could be framed in the European institutional context, and then look at a few social developments as we see them in social science, which could be relevant for the future of solidarity on this continent. Actually, to begin with, a personal note. How I approach solidarity personally. I did my master's in philosophy, even my first doctorate in philosophy. So this kind of mindset I come from. And when I was doing philosophy, I learned the structure of normative studies to be as follows. There's ethics, which means how should individuals live a good life, and how should individuals behave to be good individuals. So the science of good individual behavior. And then there's political philosophy, which means what are the characteristics of good governments or characteristics of a good state. So how should a state be structured in order to be just in terms of laws and social security and so forth. So this was like the fundamentals of the social world as I learned it as a philosophy student. Now, subsequently, I shifted to social science, and what happens, everyone begins to talk about solidarity. And I'm like, this kind of like assaults the worldview I have meticulously learned in philosophy, because solidarity seems to be a curious thing in between. It's not really about how to be a good individual, how to be a good individual human being in terms of individual conduct, nor is it about good state structures. What is a good society like? But somehow, being a virtue of community, something in between individuals and states, and being neither exactly. So why is solidarity not about individual conduct? That's because if we look at what is good conduct of individuals about, what is good individual behavior about, it really doesn't say that much about connections with other people. Like, we can act in terms of charity, for example, without having any real connection to the objects or say say, the recipients of that act of charity. So, you know, I could choose to give part of my salary to a charity, which I do, but I never have to have any connection with those beneficiaries in that act of acting well as an individual. And as it's often said, there's a given difference between charity and solidarity, and that is charity is vertical and solidarity is horizontal. Meaning horizontal, we are as human beings on the same level and somehow sharing the same space, rather than me being in a position of power and making an act of charity downwards to some beneficiary. So that's the kind of, say, challenge of solidarity. How do we remain horizontal yet acting positively? And why is solidarity not about state structures? It is because solidarity is something of a shared sense and feeling of belonging, rather than a quality of formal structures. Solidarity is not about how the government functions well. It's rather a sense or sentiment which exists and persists in a given society. So it's independent of state structures as such, which we know by noting that solidarity can exist amidst malfunctioning and unjust social structures, government structures. In other words, to put it bluntly, there can be masses of solidarity within awful states. You know, there can be states and governments which function in a completely disastrous manner, but yet there's a strong sense of solidarity between people in that society. And there can be well-functioning social, political structures without much of a sense of solidarity. So there's a given difference there again. So where do we get? We try to make some attempts in defining what solidarity is and what solidarity stands for. Let me begin with ancient Romans, as all good presentations who aim at keeping their audience awake always make reference to ancient Romans. As it happens in historical, and this is ancient Roman jurisprudence, solidarity meant that there's a collective debtor, I mean a group of people liable of paying someone's debt if one debtor fails, like a group taking a collective debt. Someone goes bankrupt, unable to repay that debt, then solidarity is followed, which means there's common responsibility of others collectively to pay that debt back to the creditor. We still know these kinds of debt instruments, but we don't call them solidarity. But that's the history. And then at some point in mid-19th century, this legal concept began to somehow evolve into a political concept, gain meanings and implications which were not about the legal responsibility to repay someone in the case of debtor default, but rather to mean something of a connection or cohesion which exists within a society. And we could develop this vocabulary of connection and cohesion further and say that solidarity means something of a sense of a shared destiny in society in reference to that original legal meaning, right? There's something of a shared destiny. If one fails, that means problems to others as well. So this original legal meaning doesn't really disappear. It just evolves evolves to assume a political meaning. And we could continue that solidarity also means acting on the basis of reciprocal sympathy, a sense of being bound together in a community. So there's a sense that we share a given social space, and in that social space, the fate of others somehow is very relevant to the fate of everyone, or the fate of you as well. Sometimes in social sciences we talk about belonging and participation, right? There's actually a Finnish word for this. If you're going to learn one Finnish word when you're here, don't go for dull words like thank you or so forth. Try belonging and participation. That's osallisuus in Finnish. OSALLISUUS. Most Finns don't appreciate what a fine word this is. And that's a fine word for the reason that it's completely untranslatable to English, as it refers to both a sense of belonging and participation. Most European languages don't have this kind of word, of these two elements which seem to be completely detached. But when you think about it, there is a given sense of thinking of belonging and participation at the same time. So you can think of solidarity as belonging and participation, a sense of community, and a sense of shared faith and mutuality, and some kind of benevolent action and reaching to assist to others on this basis. Not on the vertical basis, but on the basis of this sense of shared faith. Somehow we get to the idea of solidarity by combining the ancient Roman law, this one Finnish word I just introduced to you, and action, to do something to improve the situation of other people. Now, of course, when we talk about solidarity, we tend to talk about two different things at the same time. To talk about a feeling and an institution. We could talk about solidarity as a specific structure of feeling, as they say. This is again social science talk. So there's feeling, which is individual feeling, how I feel, what my emotions are at the moment or as a reaction to something that just happens. And then there's structure of feeling, which means feeling which is generally shared within the society. Feeling that is so shared that it refers to our time or our culture at this moment of time rather than any specific reaction or any specific moment. So we could think of solidarity or the lack of it as a given structure of feeling existing in a society. At the same time, of course, there are lots of attempts to somehow institutionalize solidarity. Then we get back to the issue of governments or states. So, especially here in Finland, you cannot talk society, you cannot talk politics without referring to the welfare state. So the welfare state is kind of like the buzzword in all politics and social action, at least until, I mean, it's changing now, but it's been like the way how we structure and understand society and its ideas and virtues and purposes. And there's a strong tendency to think of the welfare state as a kind of institutionalized solidarity. So what happens when you turn this sense of feeling into a functioning of given states? But again, here you shouldn't confuse solidarity as mutuality or structured feeling with the functioning of states. That happens all the time also in political discourse in this country, that people ask, how are welfare state structures, couldn't this model be exported to another country? And we kind of try to respond in social sciences that it's not really a model in the sense that it could be exported as a product can be exported, because there's some kind of underlying sense of community which kind of upholds the functioning of these kind of welfare state structures. It's not only a model in that sense, but you'd have to have this structure of feeling beneath. And when we talk about the same on European level, of course it's obvious that values are never completely shared, that talking about European values is somehow exaggerating the universality of given values. But nevertheless, in the construction of the European Union, solidarity has been one of the underlying concepts, quite as it has been an underlying concept behind the construction of the welfare state. There's a lot of talk about social Europe as a social and political space which would be something like a welfare state beyond nations. If you try to look at the European Union discourse on social Europe, that's very much in terms of language resembles how we talk about welfare states, but without the connection to states anymore. So that could be seen as something of an European ideal, thinking of this kind of social space beyond nations. And particularly this happened, or solidarity became one of those key words in the construction of the European Union, because that was a possible compromise between the political left and the political right. So there was the labour movement, which was very accustomed to talk about solidarity, and then there were the Christian Democrats, for whom solidarity in the sense of brotherhood or fraternity or loving your neighbour was also part of the vocabulary. So this was kind of like a conceptual compromise which could underlie what the European Union means. So you look at any key treaty of the European Union, it talks about solidarity in the sense of social protection, economic, social cohesion as a part of the structure, and so forth. And further, there was an ambition to develop a stronger institutional basis for Europe based on a feeling of common identity and a stronger solidarity between the peoples of the member states. So, as there have been a number of traditional welfare states in which national identities are based on given feeling of mutuality and given general solidarity, you find Europe, as we understand it as an ideal, as an attempt to expand these solidarities beyond the confines of the nation state. So perhaps there could be some kind of social space in which these kinds of mutualities or these kinds of structures of feeling could somehow surpass the borders of nation states. And these would be based on very much the same ideas as the welfare state, that is institutionalized solidarity as mutual benefit. That's what we talk about as a principle when we talk about welfare states, right? So anyone on their turn could need assistance, so you might as well provide universal assistance so it's there for everyone in need. And another idea related to this, solidarity makes societies stronger, also economically. So it's not a matter if societies can afford solidarity, but whether they can afford the lack of it, and of course, making the conclusion that they cannot. These are, of course, very institutionalized ideas, as said. So there's kind of this cultural domain of solidarity and this political domain of solidarity. And they are somehow interlinked, and somehow this political idea of Europe as a social space bases itself and justifies and legitimizes itself as being an institutionalization of the ideas of solidarity. That's why it's sometimes very convenient to talk about solidarity in European space, but at the same time, it's very difficult to define solidarity in European political space. That happens with concepts sometimes. Everyone kind of agrees with a concept, then you ask what it means, you get into conflict, or at least disagreement. Anyhow, this would be my sort of general overview of the concept of solidarity, how we could approach it definitionally, and in the context of its institutionalization in the European political space. And then I would like to go to some existing and future prospects of society, which I think are the ones most urgently coming from contemporary social science to inform what do we need to understand about the changes in society and changes in the European political space to understand the future prospects of solidarity, right? So 3 points. First, we can ask if the European implicit agreement, which enabled the ascension of solidarity as a concept, is somehow coming to an end, and we need to conceive of something in replacement. Second is what I call the competition society. And third is what I call the risk society. And these are all like very, very general ideas, devoid of any detail about what kind of societal futures we might have ahead. But I argue that all of them are highly relevant to our grasp on solidarity in the near future or even today. To begin with, the first one, what I call the end of the European agreement. As noted, solidarity as an ideal and as kind of embodiment of European values emerged from a compromise between the very traditional left and the very traditional right in the European political space, somehow enabling the concept of solidarity to organize our talk, our self-understanding on European ideals. But now, of course, solidarity was never the only organizing concept in European political space. Rather, Europe has always been a curious compromise, as all welfare states have always been also curious compromises, between unlimited capitalism and its counterpowers. So you'd always have to make these kind of uneasy compromises between social Europe and the very competitive markets Europe, and somehow find a balance in between. And we can ask how strong these values of solidarity are today. Are they defending themselves? Are they expanding? And it just seems that when the European project, as a political project, is going ahead, it is typically going ahead in terms of expansion of given agreements and rules, which tend to be economy driven. Even further, the European economic system, as we currently understand that, creates divergence. That means countries and economic areas are ever more apart rather than beginning to resemble each other. And it's difficult to develop shared identities in ever more distant economic realities. So we'd have to have some kind of shared economic experience to remain this sense and space of solidarity, or even keep this sense of understanding each other's perspectives to begin with. So when we get increasing inequalities in terms of countries diverging from each other and increasing inequalities in terms of other people being a lot richer than others, it becomes ever more difficult to feel genuine sympathy for each other, and therefore ever more difficult to develop solidarity on that basis. Furthermore, we see the withering away of this traditional social contract, the meeting of the traditional left and right values in the concept of solidarity. And we need to ask what kinds of solidarities do exist in a society which moves beyond this traditional social contract, the compromise between the traditional left and the traditional right, which enabled European political space, Europe as an ideal, and enabled the welfare state as we know it. So there's some kind of need to reinvent this sense of mutuality, so reinvent this identity-based sense of sharing a common social and political space. And of course, we need to note that universalism in European space has always been limited. So Europe as a project of solidarity was always about extending the sense of community beyond national borders, but keeping it within the limits of Europe. But when you begin to expand the sense of solidarity, you don't contain it. So people begin to feel this kind of sense of community, sense of mutuality with people also from beyond European borders, and many people acting in practical solidarity work are, of course, working with refugees and so forth. So the attempt to create this shared space and shared identity, when it is successful, it leads us to abandon this idea of community as having limits and expanding it even further, which is not a bad thing, but it leads to questions about the possibility of Europe as a social space to begin with. Because why stop at European borders when you're expanding this kind of idea of mutualities, expanding this kind of idea of who do you share this social space with? Second, I think I have about 5 minutes to go. The Competition Society, as I call it. This is something really under-theorized in social science nowadays. There's all this complaint about neoliberalism and inequalities and so forth, which is very much to the point. But when we really look at grievances in contemporary society, it's very often about competition, right? So today's society is not only a society of major differences, it's a society in which we constantly have to compete with each other. And somehow this is a byproduct of a very good thing, which is called meritocracy. The ideal of meritocracy means that you get to given positions because of your skills and merits and not because of the people you know, right? Or not because you're born to a given social class. But there's this uneasy byproduct of meritocracy, and that is constant competition as a defining feature of the social space. Constantly we are building our CVs and constantly we are in positions where we have to compete over funding or over educational opportunities, over new possibilities to renew your work contract and so forth. So competition somehow becomes the defining feature of contemporary society. This leads to extreme individualism, of course, and what's crucial here is that these competitive pressures are very much generational. I don't think we really grasp how generational they are. Of course, the competition society touches upon us all, but for the young generation, it really seems that this is a space for creating their identities. So competition is not only a given state of affairs, you have to compete with each other, but it's a sense of the social reality where you build your identity and attachment to this society, attachment to other people. And if you have a sense that you always have to make strategic choices, collect merits, and always be prepared for competition, this sense in itself is very, very detrimental to our attempts in creating a society based on solidarity and mutuality. It's very difficult to create these kinds of empathies or structured feelings, common senses of having these shared fates as members of a community, if your sense of attachment to other people is that you are forced to compete with them and prepare for competition, more prepare than actually compete. So these being so generational, we'd have to ask what kinds of solidarities emerge from this kind of society, and how can we create spaces and ways of talking which somehow foster the possibilities of solidarity in this kind of situation. We don't perhaps really that much grasp how different a social condition it is for building solidarities than perhaps the one in which my generation has at least matured in. Okay, I'm running a few minutes over time. Sorry for that. I'll go for my last point, which is the risk society. Now, what we mean in social sciences with the risk society is a society which generates risks that it cannot completely control itself or even foresee. And this is kind of like the defining narrative of 21st century so far. So if we are looking for some kind of defining narrative of our times, I guess the key word would be crisis. So there's financial, environmental, military, health, and so forth, risks which materialize into corresponding crises. So we are somehow facing a society which constantly tells itself to be in a state of exception and has to maneuver through this kind of state of exception. And we'd have to ask, what does solidarity in the risk society mean? We are very used to talking about how society functions in a risk society. We have to ask, how does the society function when it does not function, right? So we'd have to ask, what is the particular form solidarity can take in the context of risk society when we face constantly recurring various kinds of crises, the form of which we don't even foresee. I mean, looking 2 years back, it would have been very easy to conceive of an massive environmental crisis emerging in spring 2020. Remember that the main news in January 2020 were wildfires. Almost no one remembers that, because then came COVID. And the form of that crisis was something completely unforeseen in that social condition. So we'd have to maneuver in this kind of risk society as a society with grounding structures, being prepared to all kinds of crises, and noting that egalitarian societies actually, according to research, always fare better than non-egalitarian ones. You look at any kind of crisis, if you have an egalitarian society, it has a higher chance of pulling itself through from the crisis without that much damage. But then there's the level of individual solidarities, how they emerge within crisis. And this is something we coined this word with our colleagues to discuss this, which is contagious solidarity. Now, contagion, of course, means passing a disease to someone else, right? If you have a virus disease and someone is exposed to you, contagion happens. The other person gets the disease. But can solidarities be contagious? Was this very question. So when crises happen, people tend to act very intuitively and immediately affect other one's behavior. So there's a given difference between talking about solidarities as models and our metaphor of contagious solidarities, because contagion just passes through and happens very intuitively. So I guess contagious solidarities is a skill, like intuitive solidarity is a skill we'd have to develop in the risk society turning into a crisis society. So what happens in crisis is that there's a general myth that people tend to act in a very selfish manner. But in reality, it's much more complicated. And especially when COVID hit 2 years ago, we noted that any kind of behavior spread like a wildfire, right? When there was hoarding, someone noted that people were hoarding goods, everyone began to hoard, act as selfishly as possible. Now, when someone decided to set up a neighborhood assistance committee, that also spread like a wildfire. The next house also gets the idea, we have to see who is too frail in this block of flats to go to the supermarket, and so forth and so forth. So these kinds of ideas, whether it's selfish or whether it's altruistic behavior, they spread. And this is some kind of skill we need to really develop in the context of the risk society. It's not solidarity in the traditional sense, but it's rather an intuitive skill and preparedness. So I'm a bit over time already, so I'll just leave you with this last slide on materializing European values, where my 3 main points are summarized about the possible withering away of the European implicit social contract, the competition society, and maneuvering in risk society. These are, of course, very, very general points, but I think they somehow generate a kind of groundwork for mapping the terrain, so to say, in which we discuss solidarity in Europe today. Thank you.
Thanks, Teppo. Thanks for the very nice, very interesting, and at least for me, very thought-provoking input and thoughts. Also for the new insights, and but also the challenges mentioned. So I think we are in the topic already. I don't know if it's the same for you, but there was a lot of thoughts coming up while listening to your input. So we thought of having some 5 minutes before we listen to our second keynote speaker, for you to have a quick discussion on your table. So how do you feel about Teppo's words, thoughts? Is there anything, popping up, any ideas, any thoughts that, kind of take with you? So the idea is have 5 minutes on your table, exchange what we were just listening to. There is papers on the table. If you want to write it down, have some notes. And don't forget, there will be a possibility for questions for Teppo to after our second speech. So there will be time for some questions afterwards. So a short moment of recap, of wrap up, of thoughts on your table.
Okay, it's wonderful to hear all this talking here. I hope you caught a lot of good thoughts. Write them down. You have colorful paper in the tables. So write down if you still have something in your mind. So you'll have a possibility to ask good questions to Teppo. But we need to carry on in the program. Next up, we have a wonderful speaker with us as well, Dr. Ozgehan Senyuva from the Middle East Technical University in Turkey. He'll be joining us online for another keynote. After that, we'll again have a little moment for you to reflect, and then it's question time. But now, without further ado, I will pass the floor to Ozgehan. Welcome.
Welcome to my home. Welcome to Ankara. You're okay. I mean, during the pandemic, I was speaking online in different events, and I think the record was European Youth Work Convention when I hosted about 1,000 people in my house. So this is okay. I'm very sorry I can't be with you there in Helsinki. I really like Finland, and I was very interested in this event. And thanks for the invitation, and thanks for making it possible for me to share some questions I have in mind with this very nice group. I'm sorry about the amount of sunlight. When we tested the camera, it was before, and now the sun is setting in Ankara. We have the same time with Helsinki, but we are more south. And today was a good day. It was sunny as an ant. I look very illuminated. I look a little bit angelic here. So I hope it will not bother you too much on the screen. It's the first day, and you will do the discussion. I've seen the list of participants. Very nice group, very motivated. So I don't want to pretend I have a lot of answers that I will illuminate you now and give you everything, because I don't. I mean, I know the answer for life, universe, and everything else. It's 42. So I can finish the speech now. Or I can share with you some questions I have about solidarity. As I said, you will do the talking. So let's start with an exercise. I want you to, it's an individual one. And I want you to, can I see the room? Is it possible? Because I'm only seeing myself now. I would like to see the people, so I don't feel like my grandfather who used to speak to the TV when he was watching news. I feel like I'm alone talking to myself. So I would appreciate if you could show me the room again. Okay, this is the exercise. I want you to close your eyes just for a second. And I want you to think of a dog. Okay, at least I'm seeing somebody. Good, I'm not alone in this meta universe. I want you to think a dog. Yeah, is it done? You have a dog, raise your hand if you have a dog in your mind. I'm seeing you now from the wrong angle, but I'm seeing you. Good, everybody has a dog. Fantastic. Open the eyes and talk to someone in your table. Tell them about the dog. Which dog did you have? What size was it? What color was it? Who is this dog? Introduce your dog. Yeah, I'm glad to see that this is a dog group. People were sharing. I can see you now from the front as well. I was staring you from behind, so now it's better. Please, all the people who thought of a real dog, a dog that you know personally, raise your hands. Okay. This is a dog you know, you have seen in real life. Yeah, cool. Raise your hands if you know the name of the dog you were thinking about. If you know the name of the dog you were thinking about. Okay, good, thank you. And raise your hands if your dog is more than 3 kilos. Okay, more than 10 kilos. One person I see. Okay, two, I've seen two. More than 10 kilos. Those are very big dogs. The point I'm trying to make is then, we did not think of the same dog. You understand the term, the word, dog. You thought about it right away, the moment I told you about a dog, but it's not the dog. It was a dog. I was thinking of a dog I've seen today when driving with a puppy. So if you ask me this today, I will think of that. Raise your hands if you own a dog, by the way. If you have a dog, you're not, okay, I have to correct myself. You don't own a dog. Let's say you are living with a dog. Good. Did you think of your own dog, sir? I see a wonderful blue shirt behind the previous speaker. The most handsome shirt in the group, the blue one. He has his dog. Yes, yes, you. It's always the one who says, is it me? Did you think of your own dog? You have a dog? Yeah, you're good. You are loyal to your dog. You are not going around thinking about other dogs. I'm glad. It must be very happy. We are affected. You know, I did this exercise with an international group, and then I asked them to Google and find the photo of the dog as well, and I learned breeds that I never imagined. So some people were thinking about dogs that I don't know, of course. I don't know your dog. But they were thinking about dogs that I didn't know they existed. You know, these different breeds and types and names. And it's a very telling exercise because we hear the same word that I made in English. I just made a sound. If you didn't speak English, I just made a sound, but I made a sound of dog and you understood it and you were thinking of something. Yeah. This is a problem that we should address. This is a question I have in mind. Because imagine you turn to your friend and you say, I'm thinking of a dog. They will also think of a dog, but not the same dog. So are we talking about the same thing when we are speaking with each other? Project is about solidarity. For the next 2 days, you will keep using the term again and again and again, the solidarity, but are you talking about a solidarity which is unique to your historical experience, to your background? Is it unique or particularly shaped by where you come from? If you are from Poland, solidarity movement has political connotations. If you come from another country, solidarity meant something else. So this is my first question to you. For the next 2 days, when you speak about solidarity, what are you going to speak about? Are you sure the person sitting next to you are imagining the same issue that you are? Although it's not native language, but we all speak English. This workshop is being done in English. So even though we are saying solidarity, are we talking about the same thing? So for the next 2 days, this is one question I have for you. The second question I have for you is, what do we mean and how are we affected by it? And I love language and differences in terms. For solidarity in Turkish, we say a word, my mother tongue is Turkish, we say dayanışma. And it is a very particular word because it takes 2 or more people to do it. You can't do it alone, this word. It's very particular. And it also means leaning on each other. Literally, if I have to translate it, it's leaning on each other. So you can't do it by yourself and you can't do it. So this brings me to the issue of the power and the hierarchy or symmetry and asymmetry of solidarity. And the question I have for you is solidarity versus charity. which one are we talking? Are we mixing? There is the Latin American writer, Eduardo Galeano. I really like him, from Uruguay. He once wrote, I don't believe in charity, I believe in solidarity. Charity is vertical. It goes from top to down. And solidarity is horizontal. It respects the other. And I have a lot to learn from the other people. So solidarity over charity. And this is the discussion I would like to put on the table, Trovi, for the next days. When you speak about solidarity, are you talking about a horizontal process where everyone is included, everyone is a part of it? Or are you talking about top-down process where more fortunate ones, I mean, it was very good points in the speech before me, but is it a hierarchy, some kind of hegemonic approach that I am better than you, so I am helping you? So this was a debate in different groups and discussions when I was with, and it was always some interesting that some people would conceptualize solidarity more in horizontal terms. So I want you to discuss this for the next days or keep it in the background. Third question I prepared for this group is accountability. Accountability of solidarity. Who are you responsible to? In charity foundations, it's very simple. Accountability is inwards. You are responsible to your funders and you're responsible within the organization. So how do you measure success in charity is rather simple. But where does the accountability lie in solidarity? Is it external? Who decides it? And who are you responsible to? And how can we discuss success in solidarity is a question. I told you I have more questions than answers. And another one is action versus words. As Montaigne said, saying is something, doing is another. Or the Americans say, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? So where does the action lay in the solidarity you're talking, you're dreaming about? Hi, Romina. The Solidarity course, SALTO, has wonderful publications, and I was fortunate enough to be able to contribute with one article. I'm sure they will share it with the participants, the links. There I was discussing two effects in sociology. I'm a political scientist, but I like reading other stuff. The famous Kitty Genovese event in United States. A woman was brutally murdered in New York, and it was claimed that people heard that she was suffering, she was under attack, but nobody went to help. This became a very big issue. I discussed the history and this issue on the article. I will not go over it. But it created this fear of bystander effect. When something is happening, people have a tendency to stand away and not intervene. And this is a lot in the literature, the bystander effect. And people are afraid to take action. And I have good news for you. This is not valid. We have other forms of effects where people are compassionate, people act in solidarity, people take action. The Joker effect was visible in Corona times. The Joker effect, Batman, Joker, think about it. A destructive agent forces solidarity and cooperation in a society. So in times of difficulty, people act in solidarity with each other. When there is an external factor coming in, it creates forces on opposing directions. On one hand, it pushes individualism and the survival mode. So people rush to supermarkets and buy all the toilet paper they can find. And they have very clean hygiene. Or it also creates solidarity where we have seen young people were taking and walking the dogs of people who cannot leave their houses. There were communal kitchens, people shopping for old people, volunteers distributing food. and many actions were created. So action versus words, what is the action element? Where is the doing element in your action? And can you transform your words into action? Is always an interesting question. And my final question is about time and space. Nothing is free of time and space. Solidarity where? And where does it start? Is it easier to show solidarity with far and exotic and less fortunate place? Is that solidarity? Or does solidarity start in your street? As the Belgian volunteer program during COVID said, solidarity starts with your neighbor. There was a campaign, and they were it was encouraging solidarity between people during the lockdown and stuff. So I like this philosophy of, if you want to change the world, tidy your room. Start with your changing your immediate environment. I might want to fight neoliberalism and neo-imperialism and racism, but I have to start from my immediate environment, your family, your school, your street, your neighborhood. And the lockdowns and the restrictions have showed how important it is to think global, but act in your locality, and also leading by example. Are you aiming for change, or are you aiming for power? Is a big debate, the minor politics versus major politics debate. Change oriented is it part of your action? Is it part of your discussion? When you talk about solidarity, are you putting a band-aid, or are you curing, or are you doing something about it? So are you aiming for change, or are you aiming for a remedy, or just a fix? Is interesting debate. And I will finish on a high note and a self-promotion. In the article, I was talking about it. So the final question I have is, are you Harry Potter, or are you Katniss Everdeen? If anybody read my paper, they know this typology. Are you Harry Potter, who's waiting to be saved, rescued, and protected by old white men, who is going to take you to a prestigious elite school and train you all your life for one thing? Or are you Katniss Everdeen, whose mother is suffering from mental issues, father died in a mining accident, and she steps up because difficult times are there, and goes even into illegality, and no one protects her? Actually, she is fighting against the white old man. So which parts do you observe around? Katniss Everdeen's or Harry Potter's? I love them both, by the way. If any Harry Potter fans or Hogwarts graduates in the group, don't boo me. But this is also good to see change orientation on your own or working as a team. There is to learn from both. Kiitos for your time and giving me the opportunity. I will not take much of your time. It's 6:15. I am ready for discussion, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ozgehan, and he will stay online to wait for our questions. Now we have another 5 minutes for you guys to go to your tables again and think about what did Ozgehan say? What came to your mind? Were there any good questions? I'm sure there were tons of them. So please have a little chat in your tables, and after the chat, after 5 minutes, we will have a possibility to ask questions for both Teppo and to Ozgehan. And there, I'm going to introduce our little gadget here. For the room here, we have the catch box. So once we go into the questions, we will be throwing this. So this is an actual throwable microphone. But before that, before going into those questions, have a little chat in your table. Thank you.
Okay, so I am very much looking forward to some questions, remarks, comments. So maybe so that we have everybody back. Teppo, would you mind joining me maybe for questions? And I don't know if Ozgehan is here too, to join us. for a short question round. And well, and Anina is here with this super nice red catch box. Just for those who are not used to it, we can throw it. It can fall down, so it's okay. Don't feel stressed about questions. That if you have a question that you have to catch it, so it's okay, completely fine. And just make sure that you have to talk to it very closely, so that it can be heard. Okay, it looks super professional. Okay, so are there any questions and topics? There's one at the very end from Nadine.
Teppo. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Is that actually for online or is that? Okay, wonderful. My question is actually about the term meritocracy. And first of all, thanks for the term civil society. Finally, there is a term that defines my whole struggle of life. I didn't know that this was research, so that's great. But my question would be, as you said, meritocracy means not being bound to the social class or networks, but to be the success is destined by merits.
Speak up a bit.
Yes, okay. That success is destined by merits. Is this a societal structural change that was purposefully intended by European politicians, by policymakers, or is it just something that happened culturally, politically? In any case, when did this happen? So why is it the case that it affects my generation for the first time? Because I believe that it's definitely not something, as you said, it's generational, that is the same for everyone. But it's first generational, and still, it's definitely still defined by class very much. So it's a big question.
The competition society.
Yes, I mean it's related to competition society.
Well, I don't think that it can be easily traced in its origins, but I refer to the meritocratic ideals as one sort of explanatory background to that. So we've had these traditional society where it's too easy for people to land in various kinds of position only because they know someone or they're born to a right kind of family and so forth. And a meritocratic society is a very good thing on that basis. And I'm talking about this competition society as a kind of externality or side product, byproduct of these meritocratic ideal. So we've been aiming for a very good thing, but getting this kind, or not setting any proper limits to this ideal of meritocracy, making it turn into this kind of competition society. Of course, it's also a neoliberal idea and being forwarded politically with the idea that you somehow get the best of various kinds of systems if people compete a lot. So if people have to compete for positions, you get better people for the job. Or, you know, if you organize various institutions so that there's a lot of competition inside, you get more dynamic institution. So, of course, that's been also a politically fashionable idea. And I think we are now in some kind of turning point. We're kind of like seeing all the negative outcomes of this kind of competition society. Perhaps there's something of a turn going on already. We're somehow returning to embrace the ideas of cooperation and solidarity instead of competition. But the idea that we somehow get more dynamic with competition, it's very deeply embedded in our political institutions, in our culture of governance and so forth. So, I mean, this is a bit of a non-answer, but it's neither a cultural or political thing, but it's both. But we just have to be aware of that and aware of how massively it affects people who are now young and building their identities. If people are building their identities on the basis of preparedness for constant competition, it has a massive effect on future society. So that's kind of what I'm trying to emphasize here.
Sorry. Ozgehan, I think you also wanted to mention something on this question, is it?
You see, I can't catch the microphone, so I was going around.
But you have been nodding a lot, so we're curious to hear.
No, I love the group, and I've seen Pete's T-shirt. I realized Pete is in the group as well, so now I've seen another wonderful T-shirt as well. On the left, colorful. Pete, congratulations for the best T-shirt competition. You won it again, and me with my black hair. No, I love this issue, and I was listening to the previous presentation as well. I was taking a lot of notes. I regretted that I'm not there because we would have a lot to exchange. No. Another society term I use a lot is Burnout Society, as Byung-Chul Han put it, the fatigue society from the German. And I like the fact that this competition is very tiring, and especially on young people. He discusses, Byung-Chul Han discusses in his book, Burnout Society, that the paradigm shift from no, you can't, which was prisons and mental hospitals and oppression, to yes, you can, and actually you should society, which is always encouraging that you can go on an exchange, you can learn 10 languages, you can do sports every day, and you can wear size 34, and you can do 2 languages. And always this pressure on you can and you should is created this because it shifted the responsibility from the system, structure, institution to the individual. So if a young person doesn't have a full CV, we don't discuss equality, we don't discuss exclusion, we don't discuss structures, we discuss what is wrong with this person because this person cannot speak a foreign language. We don't take the toll, or we don't discuss what are the reasons why this person couldn't do it. And I also, there's this shift, it's also active labor market policy. I don't have to employ you, you have to make yourself employable for me. What makes you different? And globalization and neo-imperialism came as well, because now we are competing with each other for the same position in Helsinki. So the pool for them is larger. Okay, other way around, the opportunities are larger as well, but this plug and play mode is there, and it's taking a lot of toll. So Nadia, when she asked, I'm the one suffering, I'm the first generation, it's, yes, you're right, and it's very tiring, and it creates a burnout. If I gain weight and I can't lose it, and I see the Instagram, and everybody is so fit, having so much fun all the time, it's creating an also issue. And it's not a coincidence that mental well-being among young people statistically is a much bigger issue, because we are being watched by other people, but we are also watching other people a lot. So the panopticon changed, and it's creating a lot of pressure and competition. Just think about your school years. You would look at your grade, and then you would look what others did. And it's natural to do this, but imagine putting this to your whole life and how much pressure this creates and how tiring it is sometimes. I'm tired. Sorry, I got depressing a little. Show me a T-shirt of Pete again so I can feel happy. Oh, that's a good T-shirt as well. I feel very boring. People have such nice T-shirts, and I'm...
Next time you join us, there is a chance to get a nice T-shirt, a colorful one. Thanks for the comments and answers. And I saw some people agreeing on quite a lot of topics that you were mentioning. There is 2 other questions already, so maybe let's go on.
Thank you very much. I am Julio from Spain. I would like to ask to the speakers, the very interesting presentation, but I was thinking in the way you were approaching to the European Solidarity project, that in the last years we confront like a division inside of the Union. We have observed like member states not accepting to become solidar with, refugees coming from certain states. and now they open their arms in a temporary basis. We were just discussing in the table, like when they are coming from Syria, no, because they are coming from different backgrounds, religion, it's an invasion. They even call it like that, and they take the quotas, decision of quotas of the European Commission, they took it to the Court of Justice, and the Advocate General and the court, they even criticized it very much to the states because they were against solidarity principle in the treaties. It's not just a question of, economy, it is a question of treating the humans with respect and respect, international conventions in refugees. So where are we going? It's a question of what we share. It's a question of definition about the dogs. What do we understand, Hungarians, Polish, Spanish, by solidarity? If we believe there is a need to introduce its solidarity in the treaties, there is a need to reinforce, because the Conference on the Future of Europe has referred to that. And we need to move forward, maybe in a future reform of the treaties. And the second aspect, you say that we have to put attention to the intuitive solidarity that we have inside and may appear from time to time. I believe more in education, because if you educate young generations in becoming solidary enough, in the future they will be. They will, not in moment of crisis because they have to help. It's because they understand that there is an elderly people entering into the coach. They will step up and they will leave the person. They will help those who are in need. They will do it because, they have been educated. With the competition of society we are living and based in the competencies of the member states, the Finland education may be more solidary than Spain, or maybe France more solidary than Italy. So why not to have, a common stage for educating young generations in becoming more solidarity for the future? That will save us and prevent more risk. Thank you.
You want to add something?
Yes, thank you. I guess that wasn't that much of a question than a comment, and it's really easy to agree with the need for education for solidarity in general. And when it comes to the broader question of where are we going, that's of course largely impossible to answer in any short moments of time. But I'd say that the whole idea of Europe is somehow very curious, because we're trying to live in a common political and social space without the institutions that usually underlie these kinds of sentiments or these kinds of political and social domains. So Europe is like, having this idea from the top that we need to have a common idea, somehow shared values, this kind of social space, and then only afterwards begin expanding that on the grassroots level. And of course that takes time. I mean, it's so obvious that it takes time that I sometimes wonder how people feel so pessimistic about Europe. Of course it will take generations. Of course that will take generations of education before we have any kind of shared social space in sense of genuine identity thing. But I mean, we're moving forward. I mean, we get a lot of negative news about, this and that happening. And as you mentioned, Europe is very bad on refugees every now and then, or even structurally. But all kinds of news are also acts, right? So in social science, we talk a lot about performativity. That means descriptions are never descriptions. They are also acts, right? So if we keep on telling us the bad news, how bad Europe is in acts of solidarity, how bad the nation states are, how bad the people are, how negatively everything is going, then we are pushing reality to that direction at the same time as well. If we, on the other hand, I mean, I don't mean that we would have to be unrealistically optimistic, but also seeing the positive stories also affects reality to that direction. So I guess there's much positive also worth focusing on in the current European space we live in. And, you know, education, as you mentioned, is surely something creating brighter future visions.
Use the same microphone. Ozgehan, I don't know, do you want to have a short comment on that? Otherwise, we would have another question. And,
I just shared a link with the moderators about this solidarity in Europe. There was a Trans-European Policy Study Association did a series of discussions and exactly what our Spanish colleague were talking about. Very nice topic. The moderators will share it.
Okay, very nice. So we'll share it and then, okay. One more question to go.
First of all, I'd like to thank you both for the enlightening speeches. As a Finn, I'm sort of inclined to think that Finland is one of these countries with reasonably strong institutions, but a relatively low sense of solidarity in that we are happy to pay taxes, reasonably high level taxes, but then refuse to open the door to our fellow man because that's what we pay taxes for. So I suppose my question is, how do we expand our moral circle, our circle of empathy, to have that sort of everyday consideration for our fellow human beings, even in states where the institutional structures are strong and people can seek redress of grievance in the judiciary and all that.
Could you rephrase that? I have problems hearing, sorry.
Maybe you want to rephrase it so that we have it the right sentence. You're next to...
Yeah, my microphone is better, sorry.
Yeah. Laura, can you repeat it in this one as well? Just that we get the phrase.
I was just wondering, since Finland is the sort of country, in my opinion, with reasonably strong institutions, but also a reasonably low sense of solidarity between citizens, I was wondering how we expand our moral circle, our sort of sense of empathy as citizens, since, at least in Finland, I often feel like we're happy to pay taxes, reasonably high level of taxes, but then refuse to open the door to someone because, after all, that's what we pay taxes for, and that's how we fulfill our obligations as citizens toward our fellow human beings. So I was wondering, how do we go about expanding the moral circle in states where, and contexts where, institutions are relatively strong?
Yes, we're getting these really broad questions now. I kind of thought that I was perhaps discussing these issues without going enough to detail, and now when I hear these questions, these are like all such that I would be happy to give a lecture series to reply, but I think we don't have time for that. But yes, as you say, one of the downsides of the welfare state surely is a possible sentiment that solidarity can be outsourced, if we can use that term in this context, so that the state or the government takes care of whatever solidarity functions there are, so that the individual citizens don't have to do that. But then I wonder, is this, how accurate a description about the welfare state this is, or is this rather some kind of prejudice we might have, or kind of exaggerated self-criticism about the welfare states. I mean, if I look around myself in Finland this spring, for example, the amount of solidarity work which has been done to support Ukrainian refugees, for example, has been massive. And it's been like, you know, mostly on the initiative of private citizens, very little to do with state structures. I mean, of course, the government has been acting as well, but most of that comes from citizen initiative, NGOs, which are mostly volunteer run and so forth. So, you know, I do recognize this issue that the welfare states can leave us with this kind of someone takes care of the problems mentality. But then massive number of counterexamples also exist. So it's not that welfare states would be devoid of individual citizen solidarity, but rather they often even foster that. We just have to ask ourselves, how do they do that? I mean, a welfare state is not uniform construction. It's a concept which denotes some basic ideas, and on the basis of that, several, various kinds of different forms can be taken. And, it's an open question, for example, what is the relation with welfare state to civil society? How supportive are we of local organizations? How much space we give to citizens' initiatives and so forth? And that's not something that would be contrary to the welfare state, but an open question to what extent we accommodate that within the welfare state structures. So these are, to me, the kind of questions we need to ask, disregarding of the kind of government system within which we live. How do we foster these kinds of individual level solidarities, because they don't depend on the government structure as such.
And again, I saw Ozgehan nodding a lot, so that was looked nice. We are kind of running out of time, but if you want to have a comment on that one, that comment and that question, you're of course warmly welcome to do so.
Just one sentence. I'm not an expert on Finland. I didn't live there, but I think the glass is half full. That you can create a system where people are willing to pay higher taxes for the education, health, and taking care of people they will not meet. Think this is the problem of United States and the neoliberalism. That was the Reaganism and Thatcherism, saying that state should not take care of the individuals. There are church can do it, charities can do it, and it doesn't work. So from an outsider perspective, Finland is also a success story that people are still willing to pay. Somebody who has no children are still willing to pay high amount of taxes. So in general, Finnish children and Finnish culture and society can receive good education because they don't want to externalize the cost. So refugee issue is a big issue. I would not get into that, but it's not always giving out bread. It's sometimes creating a system where people don't have to ask for bread. I think that's also very respectful.
Thank you. And again, a lot of agreement in the room. And so I think there's quite some topics to discuss the next few days. So I'm very much looking forward to, especially after this start. I'm a bit of the timekeeping person at the moment, so I know there's quite a lot of questions and there's a lot of interesting things to discover still. But first of all, I want to thank you, Ozgehan, for being with us online, but really present too. So that was a pleasure. Thanks, Teppo, for being with us, for sharing interesting sides too. Yes, we're used to this online applause. And before we have some things for us for this evening, we want to say goodbye to the online audience. So a nice that you've been with us for this first day, first evening. Yeah, remember there's more to come. So tomorrow at 8:15 Central European Time, 9:15 Finnish time, and so on and so on. So this would, take a lot of more time. So be with us tomorrow, either 8:15 Central European Time, at 10 Central European Time. So there's a lot of more interesting inputs to come. So bye. And I'm here in the room now.